Now, Nic, as well as our deputy editor, Rapule Tabane, had an exclusive interview with South African President Jacob Zuma on Wednesday, March 10th. This came in the wake of increasing calls for firebrand youth leader Julius Malema to step down after his latest tirade against South African opposition leaders and white South Africans. Now, Nic, tell us a little bit about that interview. We've heard from analysts that Zuma is a man increasingly under pressure after a series of scandals. There was his personal life and the scandal around his assets. How did he seem to you?
Well, he's very good at seeming relaxed. So he certainly didn't falter on any of the questions that we asked him. He wasn't unwilling to answer any questions. He's very good in a kind of one-on-one setting. He's much more appealing in a one-on-one setting than he is on the podium. So while he clearly is under pressure, and all the facts point to that, you wouldn't pick it up over a cup of tea.
Okay. I know this is your first interview with Zuma. Is stories of his legendary charm true?
No, very much so. I mean, clearly he's very, very capable in projecting himself as someone who's very warm, very accessible, and as Rapule remarked when we left, you don't feel as if there's anything that's off limits or that you shouldn't ask. He modulates his voice a lot. He speaks in quite a resonant way, and he laughs sort of from his chest. Whereas, when he's speaking on a public platform in Parliament or in a formal setting, he can seem very stiff and very halting. He's not like that at all in person. We asked him about all of the kind of key issues bedeviling him at the moment. We asked him about Julius Malema and why it was that even if he thought Malema should be able to raise these issues in debate, why he as the president didn't say, well, that's fine, but I disagree. He didn't really give us a clear answer on that, except to say that he thinks it's important that young people say what they need to say, and that the ANC's job is to develop them as leaders and to explain to them what their errors are in private and ultimately to let them grow. We also asked him if it was difficult for him to be effective as a leader with all of the sort of scandals swirling around him. And he very sort of airily dismissed that and said, no, I've been dealing with the media all of my life, it doesn't bother me in the least.
And I mean, we've often seen this from Zuma. He seems almost non-committal when it comes to controversial issues. Is this a time in his political life where he should be taking a firmer stance as a leader?
I think so. I think that's what everyone's clamoring for him to do. One of the things we specifically asked him about were what qualities were important in a leader. And to sum it up in a very kind of brief way, he said he thinks it's important to make your team get along with each other and to have harmony. But that, of course, at some point has to give way to decision making. He was more firm on a couple of issues, policy issues, specifically the things that have been irritating Kusatu, and I think that was welcome, that he made his views on, for example, labour market reform quite clear.
Okay. Now, our readers can go and read the interview and the Q&A on our site right now, but Nic, for you, what were the highlights or things that struck you the most from the interview?
Okay, well, I think one thing that struck me was his implicit support for Fikile Mbalula and Julius Malema, who represent a very particular axis in what's developing as a succession battle. He specifically pointed out that Mbalula used to be a controversial character himself, who now reins himself in. And that struck me as a gesture of support for Mbalula at a time when many in the organization, specifically those around Malema, in fact, are calling for Mbalula to take over as Secretary General in 2012. He also made it very clear that he does think that the succession debate is starting too early, and he wants to clamp down on that. He thinks it's destructive for the country and the movement, with which I can't disagree.
Okay. And I mean, you spoke about almost this crisis of confidence that's facing Zuma. Where to for Zuma?
Certainly, I think the second term is unlikely. What I think is likely, however, is that he will survive for the short term. He said that suggestions that he would be asked to step down at the National General Council meeting in September were far-fetched, and that sort of thing doesn't happen at the NGC. But I think what you may find happening there is agitation against him gathering momentum. So he's certainly got a heck of a battle on his hands, and look, he's a past master at operating behind the scenes and coalition building, but at some point he's going to have to stop simply appeasing and choose to lead, or else he's on hiding to nowhere.
Okay. And just finally, I mean, this is our first interview as a newspaper with Jacob Zuma since he became president, and we're known for our hard-hitting investigations that uncover the cracks in government. What is our relationship as a paper with Zuma and his cabinet?
Well, when we got to the interview, his spokesperson, Zizi Kodwa, said, we've arranged this interview because the Mail and Guardian has been asking for a bit of space and time with you, and he let out a loud laugh and said, I don't know why they need the time, because they know everything already. So
that's a vote of confidence.
I know that we irritate him and his team on quite a regular basis. I'd like to think that we're all professional enough to carry on doing our work and to be able to communicate those aspects of his agenda that need to be communicated, at the same time as we keep a very close magnifying glass on the details of his conduct and his administration.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for talking to us, Nic.
Thanks for listening.